Hello. My voice hasn't been the best lately, but I'm gonna still try to do this. Um, so I was in charge of member learning at the Waterloo chapter for about a year. Um, I have a different position now, but before I completely departed from the role, I figured I'd make this video so I could share my, what I learned and what people can do to avoid making the same horrible mistakes I did. Okay, so my first experience joining EWP was after maybe 8 or 9 hours of class a day. I would go to this room on the other side of campus and sit there, and there seemed to be some interesting people in the room talking about some pretty neat things. But the member learning sessions were kind of like, here's a presentation on this. Here's as much information as we can possibly throw at you on this subject. Let's hope you actually absorb some of it. And, that starts feeling like another lecture, which it really shouldn't. That's not what member learning is. That's not what EWB is. It's not school. So that coming into the position, that was kind of my goal, was to distance myself from this approach of let's overload them with information and let's teach like people teach lectures, which is almost always ineffective. So I went from a information-based learning to more of an inspiration-based learning, and I really can identify two elements of kind of what makes a good learner and a good member learning session. So the goal of member learning should always be to foster learning beyond the length of the session. So if people stop thinking about the topic you covered after the member learning session is over, then you've failed. You really want people to leave and it to continue being part of their mental process, and you want them to keep thinking about it and keep learning about it, I guess. You want them to have a personal stake in the issue, independent of EWB, independent of what they say or what you say to them. One of the elements to effective member learning that I've identified is personal duty. So each EWBer needs to understand that if they want to be an effective, valuable, contributing member, they need to actively and openly seek out new perspective, new understanding in the realm of development. And if they're not willing to educate themselves, then they're not willing to be an effective member either. So the other element of effective member learning is engagement on the part of the member. So they need to be actively and continuously thinking about whatever development issues are relevant as they progress through their day-to-day life. They need to care and feel they have a stake in it, beyond their duty as a member to just keep learning. So yeah, that's the other part of it. So one thing I'd really stress to future member learning facilitators is to never go in full detail. You can give the high level information, the super high, super general information, and then you can branch it down from there. But it gets to a point at a certain depth where there's just way too much information to possibly cover in any kind of member learning session. So I guess an example of this would be if you're looking at mining, and you focus in on one particular mine and do a presentation giving a lot of detail and a lot of information on that one mine, the information and detail of that one mine will almost certainly not be representative of the whole mining industry. And so what you'll end up having is a member base that will be educated in mining, but really only educated in one particular mine. And so when they go into the public for public outreach, or whenever they're sharing their perspective in any venue, it's going to be skewed heavily. There's going to be an informational bias because they're going to present their ideas completely based off that one source or completely based off those few sources. So I'd really stress, don't go into full detail. Don't focus on one particular example or a few particular examples with a lot of information and facts about them, because that's not representative, and that's not truthful completely. We need to approach things at a very high level to really understand how systems work. So another idea that goes actually beyond member learning for sure is the idea that when you're presenting something, you should really present both or all sides of the argument. So if you're watching a dissertation or something about global warming, let's say, and you only hear the side of global warming is going to be the death of this planet, it's the industry's fault, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, there's lots of really good facts and really good information they can give you to support that kind of idea. But at the exact same time, somebody from the other side of the debate who doesn't even necessarily believe in global warming can provide just as many convincing facts and pieces of information. And at that point, all information becomes obscured and not really valuable unless it's in some kind of context. So when you're approaching a topic, make sure to kind of analyze from both or all sides of whatever kind of debate surrounding the issue. Because if you're not presented both sides, it's really hard to choose between them or really get any truth out of either. That's just something I've found personally. And if you do only if only one side is presented and you only pay attention to that one side and you only learn from that one side, well, that's obviously creating a bias, and we can't have that in member learning either. So remember that learning only occurs when a member actually thinks for themselves and approaches new ideas with an open and critical mind. So you want to encourage them to think in any way possible, and this is a huge part of engagement. Sure, it's their duty to learn, and they can regurgitate what they hear as much as they want and call that learning, but until they've actually think something through for themselves, it's not really valuable information, and they won't really be able to synthesize it with whatever else is already in their head and then apply it in proper context and in any kind of effective way. So one of the main roles of a member learning body within a chapter is to facilitate extended member learning. So you want a continued thought process from the learner beyond the scope of the actual member learning session. So like I said before, they need to leave and continue thinking about what you were talking about or what was being talked about or whatever. So one really easy way for the member learning body to kind of promote this idea is just at the end of presentations, for example, you could have a list of documents, papers they could read, books, or links to websites of organizations who have done awesome things in that area, and that will really help them, that will really guide them and direct them to other valuable resources for their own independent learning and interest. And the other thing I guess I would say is this goes along with what I said about presenting both sides of an issue, because presenting only one side gives no value to what you're saying at all. So when you're including those external resources, try to include a diverse set of them. Don't include links to 6 different NGOs who are calling out governments for their foreign aid policies. Include a link, maybe if you can find one, to a really good organization that's completely against foreign aid, let's say. And so reading their perspective, reading the let's make our government actually help other places perspective, that can really help a person figure out where they sit in that scale, I guess, if you want to simplify things. So overall, I just say try to make member learning sessions as dissimilar as possible to actual classroom lecture kind of thing. Really engage the members, do activities, get them hands on doing things and thinking for themselves, and really try to promote people to continue their interest and continue their learning independent of their involvement with EWB. Because when you have an EWBer who's not only committed to an issue as an EWBer, but as a person, that's when change can really happen.